Hi all. In this video, we are going to learn how to install a popular RDBMS product, that is MySQL. As I always suggest, in order to make a clean installation without any infection of viruses, I always suggest to download all the installation packages from the relevant original vendor website. Head on to www.mysql.com. Here you can find the download section. Just click on the downloads. In this download section, you can see different editions of MySQL. One is the Enterprise Edition and the Cluster Edition and the Community downloads. This Enterprise Edition, Cluster Edition, these are all paid versions of MySQL used highly for very bigger projects and for real-time deployments. Whereas MySQL Community is an absolutely free product wherein you can download and install. The difference between this free edition and the enterprise and cluster editions is purely based upon the quantity of the data that these editions can handle, along with how many number of users can simultaneously access the database. Otherwise, all the features, commands, instructions, everything is same. There will not be any difference between these three editions. For medium to small projects, or for individual projects, and for learning, this community edition is all what we need. Once we click on the community edition, you can see there are a lot of components that are listed. If you want, you can install any specific component. But anyways, now we need to install the complete MySQL. So we will go into the MySQL installer for Windows option. Here you have two different downloads. One is with a smaller file size and another is with a bigger file size. The smaller size file once you download is basically a online installation wherein you need an internet connection throughout the installation. I suggest you to download this offline installer, wherein once if you download this installer to your system, you can install MySQL at your own convenience at any time and also any number of times whenever you need. Please ensure that you always download the recent stable version, that is 8.0.34 as of now. I have already downloaded the installation file and have kept it ready. But before we start installation, I want you to understand the basic architecture of the MySQL database product so that we will get better clarity during the time of a clean installation and an installation process. Here is a small schematical representation of the MySQL database product. Basically, the MySQL database is a two-tier architectured product. It means very simple. The product is made up of two different layers or two different components. One is the MySQL database server. It is also called as a database engine. And other is the MySQL client applications. As you see, there are several client applications. You can have very many number of client applications. There are also more number of client applications apart from which is being listed here. So the database server component is responsible to store the data, secure the data whenever we need. And the client component is where we will be giving instructions or commands to communicate with the server to store the data, retrieve the data, modify or update the data. So why this product is made as a two-tier architectured product or a two-layered architectured product? That is very simple. If this two layers can be installed independently across different machines. For example, I can install the server in some other machine and I can install the client in my machine. Still, these two layers together can work and I could able to store the data and retrieve the data. In real time, most of the time, you may not see the server that is being stored in your computer, but rather the server or the database engine may have been installed in a remote computer or often in a cloud. So in order to work and access with this database, MySQL database, you need both of these components. So in our installation, we will be installing the MySQL database server and as well as the client components both into our local system. So in this case, our local system acts as a server and as well as the client. In the client, we have this MySQL workbench, which is basically a graphical user interface environment to issue commands to the server. And you also have a non-graphical terminal version that is called MySQL shell, often used where the graphical resources are constrained. And you also have the connector applications for the programming languages. This means you can also control the data or access or manipulate the data stored in the database server or the database engine, not only with the MySQL workbench and shell, but also through programming languages like Python, C, Java, C Sharp, like these kind of languages. These connector applications are also called as database connectivity drivers or ODBC drivers. With this basic knowledge, now we will start with MySQL installation. Now, I'm in the folder where I have downloaded the MySQL install. Just double click the MySQL installer. The MySQL installer starts the installation process. You might get a user access control window for which you can click yes to proceed. The MySQL installer loads and now you see there are few options. With understanding of the MySQL architecture, now we can easily understand the installation options. You have the option to install only the server, or you have the option to install only the clients like shell, router, and workbench. Since in our computer we are going to install or require both server and client, we can choose the option full. Apart from the server and client, there are also other components that are installed. That is the documentation, samples, and examples. Now click next. It gives you a snapshot of what are all the components that will be installed now. Just click execute. Now all the components has been installed. We will click next. Now MySQL will configure the server router and other components. We shall click next. Here, the config type, you have options like development computer or server computer or a dedicated computer. You also have the option to select manual or configure manual. Since we have installed both the server and the client, we will choose the configuration development computer. Please ensure that TCP/IP is checked. Open firewall ports for network access is checked. Rest everything, we will leave it as default and click next. MySQL suggests to use the strong password encryption authentication. So select this option, which is also the default. Now click next. This is a very important screen. The administrator user of the MySQL database is called the root. The name of the user will be root and you are supposed to provide a password. Please ensure that you give the password which you can remember easily, because since this is the super user which has all the access to the MySQL database, if you forget the password, restoring it would be very difficult or near to impossible. So I suggest you giving a password which you can always remember. I also suggest that you should not use the sign at, because the password has to be passed on to the ODBC drivers, where the at sign in the password can cause some difficulties. So I suggest you not to use the special symbol at. Other than that, you can use anything. You also have an option to create additional users here, which we shall not do as of now. We will be working as the root administrator. Once you have given the password, just click next. So it gives you additional options like the MySQL server as a Windows service. I suggest you to run this MySQL as a Windows service and as a standard system account. See, the start the MySQL server at system startup is automatically checked. This means whenever you turn on your computer or laptop, during the time of loading the Windows operating system, the MySQL server engine will automatically load it onto the memory and it will be always ready for you to access. We are not changing any default settings here, just click next. So the server is requesting for a file permission access. We must provide a full permission access to the server so that it can store all the data on our storage devices attached to this computer. I'm clicking next. Now it is just giving a checklist of what are all the configurations that it is going to perform, which we have selected in the past few steps. Now click execute. Now you see the configuration for MySQL server was successful and click finish to continue. Now the configuration of the MySQL server is completed. Then it is going to configure the router samples and examples. We shall click next here. In this section, I will not suggest any changes. Kindly click finish. And there are a good amount of examples, scripts that are provided by MySQL that can be certainly come as handy for us for the references. And the MySQL will also install certain sample databases with lots of tables which we can use in order to write queries and understand the output. So basically, the samples and examples are nothing but sample databases with data loaded onto it so that it will be helpful for us to run and learn some queries. So I strongly suggest that you always install samples and examples. Now I just click next. Now in order to install this example tables and load the data, this installer is requesting the permission to connect to the server. So here you are supposed to provide the root password, which we have created just a few steps back. So it is very important that you remember the password which you have given for the user root at the time of installation. So that will certainly help us to add additional users or to perform many administrative tasks of the MySQL. Now you can click check so that the connection is succeeded. I am clicking next. Now it is ready to apply the configuration. Click execute. I am clicking finish. And now all the components of the MySQL has been installed. Click next. It is giving you an option whether the setup must launch the MySQL Workbench client application so that you can immediately start connecting to the database and work. And it will also giving you the option to start the terminal mode interface to the RDBMS server, that is MySQL shell after start. I suggest you disable this because we will start it as and when we require. So now the installation is complete. Click finish. Click on the Windows Start button. Come to All Apps. Scroll down. You can see the MySQL installation folder has been created. Now you have several shortcuts. You also have a shortcut to launch the MySQL installer again, which you can use to configure any specific components or to completely uninstall any specific or the complete MySQL database. You also have a short link to start the terminal character-based interface shell for the MySQL database engine. And you also have the MySQL Workbench graphical user interface engine. Now I am clicking the MySQL Workbench so that the MySQL GUI interface is loaded. This is the MySQL Workbench, which we typically use to connect to the backend MySQL RDBMS engine. From here, you can connect to the local instance, and now it is asking you the password. Once I give the password, this MySQL client application will establish a connection with the MySQL server engine. And from here on, you can start giving instruction to see what are all the databases that are available. And you can write your SQL queries to access or modify the data from the MySQL server. Now I am closing this application. We can see all the client applications that are installed. But how do we understand that the MySQL server is running? For that, go to the search and type services. Click on the services app. This is part of the Windows operating system. Please be careful. I am just starting this to demonstrate and for your better understanding of how the server runs. Please be cautious not to change any settings here. This is a list of services or applications which are always running in the memory once you start the Windows operating system. Here you can see the MySQL 8 application is running. So this ensures that MySQL 8 server, database server is running and it is available for you to connect with the help of any SQL client applications. Usually, once the RDBMS server is installed, it is keeps on running automatically. There is no need for you to do anything once the installation is complete. So once the installation is complete, automatically every time you switch on your system, the MySQL RDBMS server or the MySQL engine automatically starts and it will be ready to serve you with the data. And when you shut down your system, automatically the MySQL server will also be shut down. So with this, we now know how to install the MySQL with proper configuration.